Following on from my best graphics card roundup of cards below £100 or dollars, what's the best graphics card you can buy from Nvidia for £70 to £80 on the used market? You might be considering the GTX 750 Ti, but if you keep your eyes peeled you could pick up a GTX 770 for around the same price. I picked up the MSI Twin Frozer 2GB model for just £68 on eBay. This is the first in a two-part series where I'll be testing first-person shooters first and some popular RPGs on the second video. At nearly 4 years old, how does this veteran hold up in some more recent titles? And a hotly debated question, will the 2GB of VRAM be enough or become an issue? As we are going to be pushing this card to the limit, I overclocked the GTX 770 on MSI Afterburner to give it the best shot at high and ultra settings on the popular titles Crysis 3, Fallout 4 and Doom 2016. After running the Heaven benchmark several times, I was able to get a stable 1241 MHz on the core and plus 150 on the memory. Having checked what others are getting, it seems that this is pretty much in line with what most people can achieve when overclocking the MSI GTX 770. All video footage was captured with Nvidia Shadowplay, so you'll get around 5% better performance than the FPS shown in my gameplay. First up we have Crysis 3, because well, what review would be complete without this golden oldie? It still holds its own graphically even when compared to today's AAA titles. On Welcome to the Jungle, this is run on the highest system spec with high textures, anisotropic filtering ×16 and SMA ×2, which gives the best anti-aliasing experience for a small performance hit in most people's opinion. Considering this is an AMD title, I was pretty impressed when the 4-year-old Nvidia card gave better performance than my recently reviewed Radeon HD 7950 on the same system. With the Fraps benchmark run 3 times, I recorded a minimum of 52 FPS, a maximum of 148 and an average of 92 frames per second. Given this performance, I was pretty confident that I could push the 770 harder to see how it would cope with very high system spec and very high textures, keeping everything else exactly the same. So I played through Welcome to the Jungle another 3 times at this setting and was able to achieve a minimum of 36, a maximum of 90 and an average of 62 FPS. As you can see, there was no stuttering and the game looked fantastic with all the eye candy turned on. Overall, we're off to a fantastic start. Moving on to the more recent Fallout 4, I was rather disappointed given the great start with Crysis 3. Now I know this game is not particularly well optimised, but it is a popular game and one that I truly enjoy as much as the next person. When running the benchmark on both high and ultra settings in some troublesome areas, I captured some of the lowest FPS I've ever encountered, with the 770 plummeting to just 14 frames per second. Now I wasn't convinced that the GTX 770 was really that bad, so I looked at the mods that I was running on this game and quickly realised that I was running quite a lot of texture packs and lighting effects. It became apparent that running all of these mods was quickly filling the 2GB of VRAM and causing the low frame rates and stutters. So I decided to run the game vanilla to see if this would improve the performance. After disabling all the visual mods, I was pleasantly surprised that the game now runs considerably smoother. This is the footage you are seeing here. So with the setup now optimised, I ran 3 Fraps benchmarks for half an hour of play in Fallout 4, including a walk around in Diamond City, as most people experience the worst FPS here. With the high preset, I achieved a minimum of 48 FPS, a maximum of 76 and an average of 68 FPS. That's a bit more like it. Having been impressed so far with the result, I decided to push the 770 harder and play on the Ultra preset. On this setting I captured a minimum of 37 FPS, a maximum of 76 FPS and an average of 65 FPS. It's also worth noting that the drop to 37 was not noticeable during gameplay, so you should be able to play this on Ultra and get a smooth experience, provided you don't run any large texture modifications. So what started out as pretty poor performance did in actual fact become pretty good in the end. There were still occasional FPS drops, but none of the stuttering I was experiencing at the beginning. Next up we have Doom, which is the newest first-person shooter we'll be testing today. Truth be told, after the rather rocky performance given in Fallout 4, I was a little concerned about this title considering that it only just meets the minimum requirements. I also thought that 2GB of VRAM might now become a more serious issue. I tried a variety of different levels in this game to see which one was going to push the 770 hardest. I eventually settled on the Foundry. This seems to be pretty demanding and will highlight if your graphics card can handle Doom for better or worse. One word of warning though guys, I do not recommend running this game any higher than a custom high preset. Making the jump to Ultra made the gameplay considerably less consistent, with frame drops down to the low 30s due to the VRAM taking an absolute spanking. To be honest though, you'd be pretty hard pressed to tell any difference between high and Ultra settings. I ran with the high preset but changed anisotropic filtering to ×16, motion blur to low, and used SMAA ×1 for the anti-aliasing, which I found gave the best visual results. My personal preference for field of view is 100. But if you go up to 130, expect lesser performance. Dropping to 90 will improve the averages by a small margin, as will changing the anti-aliasing to TSAA ×8. It's also worth noting that setting the vertical sync to adaptive seemed to help with this game running a lot smoother. So after 3 runs through the Foundry, how did the GTX 770 do? Well, on this setting I recorded a minimum of 47 FPS, a maximum of 117 and an average of 73 FPS. That's pretty awesome performance considering that this card only just scrapes the minimum requirements. As you can see from the gameplay footage, it ran really well even on the ultra violence setting. In conclusion, if you're purchasing an older card for modern games like the GTX 770, this test highlights that limited VRAM can become an issue if you're the sort of person who enjoys modifying your games. But for those of you who are happy to play first-person shooters as the developer intended on high or ultra settings, you certainly could do worse than the GTX 770. If you can pick this card up for between £70 to £80, it is definitely worth buying and will outperform a GTX 1050 or RX 460 for less money. If you found this video helpful, please like and share with others who may be considering this card on the second-hand market. If you enjoy my content and would like to see the second episode of this card in some popular RPGs, please consider subscribing. It's the little green icon in the bottom right corner. As always guys, stay passionate about PC, whatever your budget, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.